the big movie of the week, one would imagine, as far as the budget is concerned, and the promotion budget, seems to be Christian Bale's appearance as Batman.
Well, the budget looks like it's around the $140 million mark, which is fairly astonishing. Most sort of blockbusters will now cost upwards of $100 million, but $140 million is fairly big. Both that and War of the Worlds are in that kind of area. So, a huge amount of money being spent. If you're a follower of the Batman screen franchise, you will know that Joel Schumacher effectively killed it stone dead, because he had the one episode with Val. Started off with Tim Burton. Tim Burton said, I'm going to do everything very gothic, very dark, going to refer to Frank Miller and all that sort of stuff, and then made Batman and Batman Returns, both of which I thought were actually fairly dull. I never really understood why those movies weren't as good as they were. Then along came Joel Schumacher. He did one episode with Val Kilmer, which was quite good fun, largely because the film consisted entirely of the shots of people's bottoms clad in rubber. I mean, it was just this incredibly sort of fetishistic movie in which people clipped things on and clicked things an awful lot, and Val Kilmer said that line about it must be the car, chicks love the car. But Val Kilmer was his usual terrible self.
Which was he's my new friend, because he was in the other day.
Well,
which was the George Clooney one?
That was the one afterwards, which was Batman and Robin, which was the one which effectively sank the franchise. It was the one in which Arnold Schwarzenegger said, oh, I'm Mr. Freeze, and you won't put the cool on. And it was kicked around town by absolutely everybody. In fact, I have to say, I didn't hate it as much as anybody else, because I thought it was just pantomime nonsense, but it was really, really reviled. So then the franchise kind of went into death throes and stopped. Now revised. Christopher Nolan at the helm. Christopher Nolan, proper director, made films like Memento and the remake of Insomnia. So he's a proper, intelligent, smart director. Batman Begins obviously goes right back to the origins, effectively wipes the slate clean, doesn't attempt to map onto the Burton versions or the Schumacher versions, takes the story of Batman, of young Bruce Wayne, kind of rewrites the traumas of this young man brought up in incredible wealth, loses his parents because they're killed in a mugging in Gotham City, and therefore falls into the criminal underworld in order to discover how the criminal mind works. Goes off and has a bit of Zen training at the hands of Liam Neeson, who reappears later on in the movie in a sort of strange twist of the narrative, and then comes back to Gotham City, meets top crime boss, played by your very new friend, Tom Wilkinson, who was in recently.
That's right, yeah.
And is absolutely great. Anyway, it's much darker, it's much grittier, it's much tougher, it's much more realistic, and it is frankly much better than any of the Batman movies. The things that are great about Batman Begins, firstly, it's a little independent, weird art movie trapped within the body of a $140 million blockbuster. So what we get an hour of character development, but really interesting character development taking place against spectacular backdrops, but character development nonetheless.
But so this is before he actually puts on any black leather at all?
Yeah, exactly. And all the stuff before Batman actually begins. You have the stuff about Bruce Wayne and the terrible guilt that he feels about the loss of his parents, the weird process that he goes through in descending into the criminal underworld. When we meet him, he's in prison, him then learning his martial arts skills at the hand of Liam Neeson, who, again, is a kind of Nietzschean character. On the one hand, you think he's very good, but in fact, his good is very close to evil. By the time Bruce Wayne gets back to Gotham and has these conversations with these top-ranking criminals, he realizes that, in fact, the police and the criminals and the justice system are all very, very close together. Now, this is an idea which has long been embodied in the Batman comics, but has strangely been missing from the movies, because the movies have always attempted to play, I think, to a much more general audience. There is half an hour of stuff blowing up. There is half an hour of huge rocket-powered action, which, for my money, is the stuff that Christopher Nolan says, look, I've done the work, now I have to have the stuff to sell the movie. And it's interesting that when you see the trailer, it leans very heavily on the spectacle and obviously on the design. However, whereas Batman movies in the past have referred to films like Fritz Lang's Metropolis or Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, this is now very commonplace. I cannot remember a Batman movie that had a sequence that specifically referred to George Romero's Day of the Dead, and that was really impressive for me. There are moments of very sort of full-blooded horror. It's a 12A certificate. The BBFC keeps saying this. 12A certificate means 12-year-old, or if you think there's a very special circumstance, take somebody maybe younger. We are not talking about a young person's movie for two reasons. Firstly, because there is scary stuff in it. Cillian Murphy, the actor who I first saw in Disco Pigs, which I hated, and then he was in 28 Days Later, the Danny Boyle zombie movie. He plays a really, really creepy psychotherapist, psychiatrist, nutball character in this film, and he's really nasty and really edgy and really tough. But so there's scary stuff in it, but there's also a good hour of stuff which younger audiences, I think, simply won't get a handle on. for all the stuff that George Lucas talked about saying Star Wars 3, this is the dark one, this is the one that really does the business. No, it doesn't. Obviously, Star Wars 3 is a total load of old rubbish. There's no darkness in it at all. Anakin Skywalker gets a bit grumpy one day and goes, "Oh, I think I might as well go over to the dark side." In this, we actually have something that approaches profound psychological development. Now, that said, of course, it's a Batman movie, so of course there is the Batmobile, but the Batmobile is actually much
tank.
Well, it's a tank, exactly.
Tank.
It kind of makes sense because what it is a military vehicle that's been developed by Wayne Enterprises and has therefore, been developed for a purpose other than for Michael Keaton or Val Kilmer to jump into so it looks sleek when you're running around Gotham City. There is a fantastic supporting cast which includes people like Rutger Hauer. Would that we could see more of Rutger Hauer because I really like him. Gary Oldman, who gets to deliver one of the best speeches in the movie when he starts talking to Batman in the middle of all this stuff, in the middle of all this chaos. He has this brilliant speech in which he says all this is a war of escalation. We get semi-automatics, they get automatics. It's all going to hell in a handcart. And it's dealing with this very dark, very tough, very nihilistic stuff. Christian Bale is great. I mean, Christian Bale, if you've seen American Psycho, there's an awful lot of comparison between what he does in American Psycho and what he does in Batman. He basically plays Batman in the way I think that Frank Miller reimagined Batman as a psycho head case. It's too long, and the last half hour, which I think is there to sell the movie to the popcorn crowd, does get a little bit grating. But generally, it is every bit as good as you could possibly expect from a $140 million movie, and is by quite some distance the best Batman movie, and absolutely puts Star Wars back down in the ground where it belongs.
Owen says, saw Batman Begins last night and loved it. Christopher Nolan is a genius. The cast is superb. Hope George Clooney and Joel Schumacher watch it and weep.
I'm sure they will, because Joel Schumacher apparently said to Woody Allen, having made Batman and Robin, he said, "It's terrible, I've made the worst movie of all time." And Woody Allen apparently replied, "No, you haven't. That would have been an achievement. You haven't even done that."
Nick in Leeds, Batman Begins is brilliant. Christopher Nolan has dug the franchise out of the grave it was sent to thanks to Joel Schumacher's Forever and Robin. All that happens in those two films is just two major stars wearing stupid costumes and looking very silly.
Yes.
John in Cardiff, I need your help, Mark. My girlfriend has no interest in seeing Batman Begins. Hang on, wait. Yeah. The original Burton movie she enjoyed mainly due to Keaton, Nicholson, Passenger and Burton's direction, but Begins the only draw for her is Gary Oldman and slightly Morgan Freeman. Please give me a few one-liners that will convince her that Batman Begins must be seen, and tonight, otherwise I'll be sneaking out on the weekend. Okay,
I think that that Christian Bale is a big draw, and interestingly enough, I was on the phone to the press officer from the British Board of Film Classification just before it came on. A very, very smart woman called Sue Clark, and I said, "I just saw Batman. Did you see it?" She said, "Yes, I saw it," and she liked it very much as well. And we had a little bit of a discussion about whether or not it plays to men as well as women, and we both agreed that it's completely universal, whereas I think the other movies were rather boysy.
John in Cardiff, I think that's part of your licence fee rebate there. You talked about Theremin,
yes.
Theramins earlier. How much do you think it would cost? And thank you to the people from Theramin World for all the info. How much if you wanted an ether wave Theramin, how much do you think it would set you back?
£700-800
$3,000.
Oh well.
If you want to, of course, make the opening sound for Good Vibrations, that was a.
Funnily enough, it wasn't. It was apparently it was an electric theremin in which you play on a flat piece of steel rather than on the point, rather than the thing that you point at. No, the name of the guy who played it on Good Vibrations is the name of the guy that I was trying to remember.
This from Terry in Portsmouth, taking my son and mates to watch Batman for a 10th birthday tomorrow.
Okay.
Is that good or not?
Yeah, I figure. I mean, if they are, 10-year-olds, I think can just about manage it. If they go, there are some scary things in it, and I would say the biggest difficulty is that they have to have a big attention span, because there are long sections of character dialogue all happening in beautiful settings, but it's quite dark, and there's a long way before he gets to being Batman. But if they are advanced 10-year-olds, fine, make sure they're well supervised.
The first Spider-Man was a 12A. It was the first 12A that actually turned up. Is it on a par with that? I mean,
it's darker. It's darker. Yeah. Okay. So the first Spider-Man was 12A because there's a lot of kind of violence in it, but this is darker in theme and tone.
Elsa in Manchester, was Batman on audition for James Bond, do you think, for Christian Bale?
No, he'd never play James Bond. I think he'd be completely the wrong person.
John says, saw Batman Begins last night. One question been bothering me since. Whose idea was it to make Christian Bale talk like a wrestler as soon as he puts his costume on?
But it is true that whenever he puts the mask on, suddenly his voice goes down like that. But that's fine. It's Batman,